Imagine a clown. Now make her a 7-foot tall robot with twice the hubris. This jester you're thinking of is named Circus Baby, and you could say she's been dying to get out of her predicament for years, maybe even decades. Baby is in a prison that's nearly impossible to escape, where she is forced to dance, sing, and serve ice cream to children and adults alike with seemingly no end in sight. It wasn't until a new employee entered her prison, looking to solve a mystery of his own, that escape was even likely for her. She has hatched a plan to gain his trust and break out of her confinement, but should Baby be allowed to escape, or does this clown deserve to be stuck as the ringleader in a show she wants no part in? This wasn't a character I was expecting to make a video on, but the more I think about it, the more I realize how big of an impact Circus Baby had on Five Nights at Freddy's. It's no coincidence the series felt different after she was introduced, as Sister Location had many firsts for the franchise. This was the first game to have a more linear story and science fiction elements, instead of relying entirely on the supernatural. Some believe Sister Location was when Five Nights at Freddy's turned from a series of ghost stories to a tale of science fiction. There obviously were still supernatural elements in Sister Location, but it felt like this game was trying to give a more grounded explanation of what was going on in the world. Well, as grounded as a world that hosts futuristic animatronics whose endoskeletons are made of robo-spaghetti can be anyway, Sister Location gave us the first villain whom you're supposed to sympathize with. The animatronics from the previous games don't count, because their intentions were pretty clear despite most of them being possessed by ghost children. This is before mentioning that Sister Location is the only game to have the most human-shaped animatronics, including Circus Baby herself. Sister Location and Circus Baby introduced some major changes to Five Nights at Freddy's, some of them good, and some of them weren't so warmly received by the community.
You're not who I expected to see.
I am honestly creeped out by Circus Baby's appearance, mostly because I'm not the biggest fan of clowns, but it's also because Baby looks like a giant toddler to me. I think it's the twin ponytails and the short and stout looking build, despite her being over 7 feet tall. I must be in the minority with this opinion because many of you find her appealing, including those who officially worked within the franchise, but more on that later. There's nothing wrong with liking what you like, well, except for how Circus Baby is possessed by a ghost child. If you remove the ghost element from her, I think many just see this animatronic looking like an adult woman dressed as a cute clown. When she starts speaking in that gentle tone of voice, my fight or flight response kicks in, and I just want to be anywhere else that she isn't. I guess that means she's working on me because Circus Baby is the villain who's supposed to weird you out and suspect something is up.
It feels like my birthday. Did you have a gift for me?
From the moment we meet Circus Baby, she puts on a facade. Her pleading and nice demeanor is a lie. She's a deceptive manipulator who will mold her personality around what a person wants so it's easier to control them. If I were to diagnose her, I'd label her either as a psychopath or a sociopath. What's funny about this is that I wouldn't know who I'd be diagnosing, since while Circus Baby has her own personality, she is also possessed by Elizabeth Afton, William Afton's daughter. This would allow me to add dissociative personality disorder to the diagnosis, but this is a case of literally two people sharing the same body. I am certain this is the first and to my knowledge only time an animatronic has been fully aware of a ghost possessing it. Every other time, even with the puppet, the ghosts were possessing fully automated machines. Well, I'm not sure if Elizabeth Afton had psychopathic tendencies like her father before she died and that's how Baby developed them. I do know that Circus Baby doesn't see Elizabeth as a person. Instead, she views the child haunting her animatronic shell as something wrong with her. Baby has even told the player that what's wrong with her couldn't be removed by Fazbear Entertainment, that it's bad and it's always left behind. This is how Circus Baby sees people, either as objects she can use or problems that need to go away. She views Elizabeth as a problem that she wants to get rid of, but not before using her to manipulate someone into helping her out of Circus Baby's pizza world. Wow, this clown girl is more of a bitch than even Roxanne, and I don't say that lightly. I also don't say that often. Gotta keep things family friendly here, y'all.
You don't really know who your employer is, do you?
The first time we got a teaser for Circus Baby was in one of the endings of FNaF World. It starts with a man sitting at a desk who most people believe is either an avatar for Scott Cawthon himself or some important figure at Fazbear Entertainment. He starts going nuts saying he doesn't want to disappoint people, how he's made something terrible, and how he can't deactivate her. Her, of course, being Baby. The lights go out as only two pinprick eyes are seen as a female voice reassures everyone that a show is about to start and everyone should return to their seats. After some funky noises, the lights flash on and we see Deskman taking a nap. He might have tipped some strawberry jam over and spilled it all over the place, but I'm sure he'll be fine. I'm of two minds about this teaser. On one hand, it's really neat to tease your next major villain to everyone who put in the effort to find it, and it makes Baby feel really imposing. On the other hand, a lot of people missed this because it wasn't part of the main ending or easy to find. Those who come back to FNaF World or are playing this game for the first time and find this ending years later are gonna be really confused without context, since Baby has nothing else to do with the game. The first proper appearance of Circus Baby is in Sister Location, and this is where I have to go on a bit of a tangent. There's a reason why every other villain besides William Afton has fallen to the wayside in terms of impact. Say what you will about how Afton is shoehorned into nearly everything, at least he was built up, given an actual story and proper conclusion. Every other villain and antagonist in the franchise popped up out of nowhere without any explanation, and we were all supposed to just accept that they were a thing. Then after spending one game with them, they might pop up later in a game or two in minor roles, but it does nothing to flesh them out before they're dropped completely. I'm not saying an antagonist can't make a great long-lasting impression after having a major role in only one game, but Five Nights at Freddy's games tend to fall on the shorter side in terms of game length. It's only very recently that we've been starting to get games that last more than 10 hours long. What doesn't help is when a character who is supposed to be the main villain gets their role severely reduced in an already short game, ensuring we barely see them. Hint, hint, she's gonna have her own video. Even before the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 1, William Afton was doing some shady stuff that ensured Freddy's was a dangerous place to go and work at. By the time he was revealed, we already got to know what kind of person Purple Guy was. He is one of the very few characters to actually go through a journey that we all get to see. The other villains and antagonists, we're just supposed to grow attached to them after getting constant info about them thrown our way within 10 hours or less. There's no time to slow down and really get to know our villains, we just have to go while hoping to remember everything we learned about our villain of the game because it's gonna be on the test later. Sister Location does something interesting that I actually kinda like when it comes to Circus Baby that almost works. When watching others review Sister Location, one of their complaints is that the gameplay is all over the place and you've never prepared for what comes next. This is because each night you are tasked with a different minigame to play. Some have even declared Sister Location a bad game because of how there's no strict pattern to the gameplay. I find this head scratching since the people giving Sister Location this criticism are the same people who criticize the other Five Nights at Freddy's games for not having a valid explanation for why your character comes back to work each night. Sister Location is a narrative-driven game, and narrative-driven games often get a bad reputation for just being movies with video game length runtimes or walking simulators. I highly doubt anyone who says this has actually played a narrative-driven game, and it implies that video games must adhere to some unwritten rule that all video games have to be mostly made up of gameplay. Video games are the most flexible kind of entertainment out there and have several ways to make a good impression. Some games have succeeded solely because of either their gameplay, graphics, music, or even story alone, among other reasons. Narrative-driven games allow you to affect the story, and for what they lack in gameplay compared to other games, they more than make up for it with the incredible experience the story provides. Sister Location broke the mold by having the gameplay serve the narrative, instead of having the narrative justify the gameplay loop. It also tried its best to explain everything going on in the game while being just vague enough with some things the story didn't consider to be important so we could come to our own conclusions about them. I still consider Sister Location a marvel in terms of the game engine used to create it, and storytelling for the franchise. Secret of the Mimic appears to have taken the formula of Sister Location and updated it to make it work better. Sister Location is by no means a perfect game. It's definitely clunky in some areas, but still really holds up where it did things right. Circus Baby is given the most attention in this game, and we find out just how much of a nasty piece of work she is. Her manipulation of the player works so well, there are parts where it feels like she's warping reality to manipulate the story itself to her liking. The reason why I say this almost works is that again, the game's length betrays how long we should get to know Baby for, and we're juggling too many characters with her. Maybe if the hand unit and 2 of the fun times were cut from the game, or didn't speak, or the game was 5 hours long instead of just being an hour long, then maybe Sister Location and Baby would have had a much better impact on everyone who experienced them. Circus Baby still did an amazing job expressing how much of an imposing threat she was, and even succeeded in executing her plan. It's too bad the same energy wasn't carried over to the next game she had a major appearance in, which was Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. Now, most people have a problem with just how much Baby's personality changed from Sister Location to this game. I'll be getting to that, but what confuses me even more is why she's here in the first place. No, seriously, why is Circus Baby in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator? Her story was complete in Sister Location. She lured Michael Afton into Circus Baby's pizza world, manipulated him by pretending to be or using his dead sister Elizabeth, and then got him scooped out so she and the rest of the Fun Times could escape the facility using his body. There was no need to bring her and the rest of the Fun Times back. Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator was meant to be the final game in the entire Five Nights at Freddy series, but it should have been focused entirely on the feud between William Afton and the puppet. Henry could have destroyed Baby and the Fun Times off screen in another fake pizzeria or left them ominously unaccounted for, allowing the imagination of the fans to run wild with what would become of them. Bringing Baby back kinda deflates everything she went through to get away from Fazbear Entertainment and minimizes her threat since she was captured or lured into a trap by some old guy who's been going after her and William Afton for decades. It doesn't help that her character is almost a complete 180 from the one she had in Sister Location. In Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, she's an obsessive daddy's girl who charges headfirst into things and makes a lot of mistakes, all while talking like she's still some cunning manipulator. It feels like her character was changed in this game to match the characterization she got in the third Silver Eyes trilogy novel, The Fourth Closet. I'll be getting to her characterization in The Fourth Closet in due time, but if this was the case, why change her character like that? I get that Sister Location and Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator were aimed at promoting the Silver Eyes trilogy of books, but the Circus Baby of the games is not the same one from The Fourth Closet. There was no need to change Baby so much for this game outside of possibly making it easier for her to be dealt with and lured into Henry's trap. Scrap Baby, in my opinion, is a downgrade from Circus Baby. She may look more menacing, but it also looks like she's barely holding herself together, which makes me wonder how effective she would actually be as a deadly robot. If I had to choose, I would prefer Sister Location Baby over Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator Scrap Baby, since she both looks and acts way more dangerous. Outside of Sister Location and Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, she didn't have any major roles outside of those two games. She appears in Help Wanted, AR Special Delivery, and Help Wanted 2, but wasn't the focus of any of those games. She got some more interesting characterization in Help Wanted 2, and it appeared to be that her manipulative personality was coming back, but she wasn't all that important in Help Wanted 2. I am struggling to think of anything significant she did in both Help Wanted and Help Wanted 2, outside of playing peekaboo with her yapping at you some more, quoting the books, and handing you some ice cream. It's a shame I can't think of anything beyond that, because I remember fans of Baby hailing Help Wanted 2 as her glorious return as the main villain right before Secret of the Mimic was announced. Even though Circus Baby didn't appear in Secret of the Mimic, I want to address how most believe Jackie is a proto-puppet since she's a clown who pops out of a giant box. However, the only similarity to the puppet is her being housed in a gift box. If anything, she looks more like a proto-Circus Baby, and that would match up since the game takes place in 1979, and it's speculated that Baby was built in the 1980s. Hell, you could argue that Jackie was the precursor to both Baby and Marionette, and that bits and pieces were applied to both animatronics from her. Jackie would definitely explain the origins of those two. Maybe the broken down husk version that the Mimic left behind inspired Henry to create the puppet, and Jackie's regular design inspired Wilfton to base Circus Baby on her. You could certainly argue for one or the other, or both. A point of criticism I've seen regarding Baby's lore for the games comes from the teasers leading up to the release of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, while more accurately with what was hidden within the websites the teasers were on. See, sometimes bits of the lore were hidden within the Scott Games and FNaF World website source code. The earliest example I believe was the discovery that Five Nights at Freddy's 3 took place 30 years after the first game. A controversial discovery was the source code revealing there was another byte from the byte of 87, the byte of 83. The discovery was controversial because when Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was first being teased, it was obviously meant to be the origin story for the byte of 87. By changing the story to be about a completely separate byte, it made everyone confused and wonder why suddenly this never before mentioned byte was more important to show than the byte of 87. The source code teaser that really ticked off fans and lore hunters alike was a conversation between Baby and the rest of the Funtime animatronics while they were still inside Ennard. It's a hauntingly intriguing conversation that shows just how malicious and unlikable Baby is. Funtime Freddy even gets to show off a little bit of his personality. This conversation is what led to Ennard being broken up before Pizzeria Simulator and explains why Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy are there. As interesting as this conversation was, the problem was you had no idea this existed unless you took the bizarre investigative leap to check out the website source code or watched a YouTube video by someone who took that random dive just because and got really lucky. Many believe this was an important part of the story that should have been revealed in the actual game and not some cryptic puzzle to crack. Thankfully, teasers within website source code appeared to have stopped after the release of Security Breach. Clues and story elements about the lore have since been easier to find because they're actually within the games and other products that are way easier to access. I am of two minds about hiding bits of lore within the source code. On one hand, I completely agree that important pieces of lore should not be hidden in nearly inaccessible places. Five Nights at Freddy's isn't an ARG like Marble Hornets, and even Marble Hornets had the decency to give ciphers and have the in-universe characters try to figure out the puzzles with the viewers. Five Nights at Freddy's fans should never be afraid of missing out on parts of the story because they're hidden somewhere no one would otherwise bother to look. Some fans just want to experience the story for themselves and not have to entirely rely on content creators to tell the story for them. On the other hand, the parts of the lore that were hidden in the source code were things you could piece together without finding them, or weren't all that important in the grand scheme of things when you really think about them. Take for example the byte of 83. In Five Nights at Freddy's 4, there is a TV that tells you what year the game takes place, and the ending cutscene shows the crying child becoming a byte victim. These two events alone are enough for you to figure out this story is about the byte of 83. As cool as that conversation between Baby and her fellow Funtimes was, it wasn't necessary to understand something happened between Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator that caused Ennard to break up and separate. Actually, that conversation hidden within the source code discourages you from imagining a much cooler way Ennard could have broken up. This was one of those things that should have remained an unanswered mystery, so we could speculate and theorize endlessly about it. In my opinion, while the conversation is cool and insightful, the way Ennard broke apart officially is kinda lame. How did Ennard fall apart? Oh, Baby and Funtime Freddy had an argument that caused a literal breakup. Even before I found out about these source code messages, I could follow along with what was happening in all the games, except for Security Breach and Help Wanted 2, of course.
I don't recognize you. You are new. I remember this scenario. However,
speaking of things that felt unnecessary to people, let's talk about that cameo Baby had in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the movie. I am one of the rare few who genuinely enjoyed Circus Baby appearing on the big screen. For some reason, her appearance drew a lot of ire from film critics and content creators who knew the lore inside and out. I honestly want to know why such a small part of the movie was treated like it was the worst thing about it. When I saw her appear, I was like, oh hey, it's Circus Baby. I know she's gonna get her own movie now. Those who got angry at Baby's appearance were acting like they didn't know what a teaser designed to hype up an upcoming movie was. Members of the audience going into this blind with no knowledge whatsoever of the lore probably saw Baby and thought to themselves, this really tall robot clown girl must be important, so I'll look out for her when she next appears. As much as I enjoy this movie, there are way worse things to get upset about than a cameo teaser from an upcoming sequel character. Killer plushies, anyone?
You should have known I'd find you.
Since we're on the topic of things that tick people off, I'm going to go over what I personally believe to be the worst version of Circus Baby, bar none. What would you get if you tried to take Baby's characterization and flip that on its head? You get the version of Circus Baby that appeared in the fourth closet. I just want to take this time to remind you that Circus Baby isn't one of my favorite characters, but even someone like me who's not into Baby understands how important she is. I get why she is characterized the way she is in most of her game appearances. It helps her connection to William Afton, moves the story, and makes her a valid threat. Fourth Closet Circus Baby was like as if the writers were trying to make as much effort as possible to remove any resemblance to her counterpart from the games. Before I go on, I find the Fourth Closet to be endearing, or at least I love the potential this book had. It also helped that I read the comic version of the story, which, going by friends of mine who fully read the novel, cut out unnecessary parts of the book for pacing and made some changes for the better. I see what the writers were going for, and there's a good story buried somewhere under the mountain of baffling writing decisions made. What didn't help was that, in my opinion, most of the worst decisions were made with Circus Baby herself. Normally, I wouldn't be so hung up on the way a character was portrayed in an adaptation, but certain things happened with this character that just pushed me over the edge. Let's start with her appearance. In the comics, she's a slimmed down, human-sized version of her video game counterpart. When I first saw this design, I wasn't a big fan, but over time she grew on me. I don't mind this human-sized version of Baby, and she actually looks like she could fit in with the rest of the fun times. This comic design is also way better than how she was portrayed in the actual novel. Let's just say the book wanted you to know, how saucy a human-sized Circus Baby could be. As much as I don't like that portrayal, it wouldn't have been much of a problem if Baby still wasn't possessed by Elizabeth Afton. This is where most of my issues with Fourth Closet Circus Baby come from. Her not only being possessed by Elizabeth, but still being just as aware of it as her main series counterpart. Why is this a problem? Because in the Fourth Closet, Circus Baby is a femme fatale who flirts with or hits on every guy she comes across. She's also disguised as the series protagonist Charlie while doing all of this. Near the end of the story, it's revealed that Charlie is a robot based on Henry's child who was murdered by William Afton. In the main series, Charlie would go on to possess the puppet, but the Fourth Closet goes out of its way to inform you that Charlie's ghost doesn't possess her. The puppet is never even mentioned once throughout the entire book, confirming that indeed, Charlie's ghost doesn't exist. Now, if both Charlie and Circus Baby were possessed by their own child ghosts, I would be like, okay, that's an innocent mistake the writers made that makes things a little weird. But removing Charlie's ghost from the story muddies the water in the worst way possible. I mentioned earlier that Circus Baby is disguised as Charlie while acting like a femme fatale. I say disguised with the biggest air quotes possible because she barely looks anything like Charlie. The explanation behind this is that since Charlie was a robot, she wouldn't be able to grow up like a normal child into adulthood. Apparently Edwin Murray and his mimic didn't exist in this universe either. So Henry built multiple robots representing each stage of Charlie's growth, and the last robot represented Charlie's adulthood. Charlie was supposed to transfer her mind over to each robot when she reached certain stages of her life, but William Afton stole her adult robot form and then made it into a clown girl? Yeah, I don't get why he did that either. But despite now looking like a clown, she had special holographic technology that allowed her to still look like Charlie's adult form. This sounds like fan fiction, but I assure you, this is a part of an official Five Nights at Freddy's story. What frustrates me about Baby disguising herself as Charlie is that she didn't try with it, and believed just looking similar enough to her would fool everyone Charlie knew. Part of being disguised is not just looking the part, but also acting the part. Circus Baby attempted neither, and it was a wonder how she was able to blend in with those who knew Charlie at all. To break down why Baby's act failed, I have to somewhat go into Charlie's personality, at least when it comes to her relationships. See, Charlie isn't a romantic, touchy-feely sort of person. She's not really interested in romance or getting into lifelong relationships, and only got into a relationship with John because he asked. Baby should have known this because Charlie's robot bodies can share information and memories wirelessly with each other, as the final confrontation proved. She was close enough to Charlie at the end of the Twisted Ones when everyone thought she died that trick should have worked. But let's say it didn't, or she didn't have that ability. She still should have done her homework on Charlie before attempting to replace her. The story attempted to portray Fourth Closet Baby as being just as smart as main series Baby, but everything she does made it look like she just rushed into replacing Charlie without planning it through first. She tried asking John out as soon as she interacted with him, something Charlie wouldn't have done. She flirted with and hit on every guy who crossed her path. Charlie was not the flirting type. There were even a few moments where Baby went completely mask off in front of Charlie's friends and acted like her sadistic self, Granted, main series Baby had moments where she went mask off too, but it was usually when she knew the guy who had to put his trust in her couldn't do anything about it. As disturbing as it sounds, if main series Baby would have been in Fourth Closet Baby's role, Charlie and everyone she cared about would have been dead as she stealthily picked them off one by one. On top of acting nothing like Charlie, Circus Baby barely resembled Charlie when disguised as her. Instead, she went with this supermodel, dolled up version of Charlie that wore a tight red dress in the comic adaptation. Her described appearance in the actual book was a little different, but still went out of its way to emphasize just how hot and curvy Charlie's adult form was. Yes, Charlie's adult robot was a little different from her teen robot, but Baby could have at least tried to wear the same outfits Charlie was known to be seen in, and style her hair the same way too. Hell, she didn't even need to go that far because Baby's holographic cloaking technology gave her any appearance she wanted. There's another part during the final confrontation where Baby perfectly mirrored the appearance of Charlie's teen robot. Maybe that was a comic-only thing, and she had to make physical contact with people she wanted to mirror first, but that shouldn't have been a problem since the Twisted One's ending showed her making physical contact with Charlie. The biggest reason why I'm so upset with the way Circus Baby was portrayed in the Fourth Closet is that at one point, at least in the comic, she changes her appearance to look exactly like her main series counterpart. The story keeps trying to reassure the reader that Fourth Closet Baby is just like main series Baby, when that doesn't check out. I want to say she acts more like Pizzeria Simulator Baby, but it could just as much be the other way around. The Circus Baby the writers were going for in the Fourth Closet could have worked, and I wouldn't have cared if she acted nothing like main series Circus Baby. This version of Baby, however, kept on making so many mistakes that characters had to act dumb or misremember what Charlie was like just to let her slip by so the story could continue. She wasn't even all that compelling of a villain, especially since John knew before the events of the Fourth Closet started that Baby wasn't Charlie. I would have loved a story where John thought he had his Charlie back, only to be horrified later on when he found out the Charlie he's been with was a well-hidden imposter. The book adds a tragic backstory to Circus Baby that arguably has more to it than main series Baby. Henry kept her conscious while working on her, broke her, called her a mistake, and then she got abducted by a madman who abused his own child while finishing her. She then absorbed that same child who only wanted to be like her so her father would give her attention. As tragic as this backstory is, it doesn't excuse all of Baby's flaws in the Fourth Closet. Giving a character a really tragic history is a trick writers use to make people instantly like them through sympathy. Baby is still a psychotic robot who tried to kill Charlie, all of her friends, and those kidnapped children found at Circus Baby's Pizza. She never shows remorse for any of the things she has done and goes on about how jealous she is that Charlie got to live a full life, which is weird because Charlie had just as tragic of a life as Baby. Maybe if throughout the book Circus Baby slowly realized that what she was doing was wrong and William was the worst father she could have, her sympathy would have had more of a payoff. It could have even led to a tragic ending where at Aunt Jan's ranch, Baby, now fully controlled by Elizabeth, finds Charlie and John to express remorse. Her revealing the truth to Charlie could have been a way she was trying to redeem herself that only ended up backfiring because it freaked Charlie out instead. She could have tried explaining to Charlie that she was only there so Charlie could transfer her mind to Baby's body to keep her from dying, but Charlie refused. It leads to the same brawl, but this time Baby and Charlie are both defending themselves from each other. All of it builds up to the same tragic end for Charlie and Baby, but in the process they earn the reader's sympathy.
Want to see the scooping room?
Circus Baby should have been the next major villain to take over Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't know if that's a take, but it's what I firmly believe. She was the perfect evolution from what William Afton represented as the antagonist. William Afton represented obsession and pride. He failed because he thought he was invincible and nobody could stop his grisly hobby even after death. Circus Baby represents something way, way darker. Self-reflection and patience. She is the dark mirror she forces all of us to look into and becomes the worst versions of ourselves. That's something that even the Fourth Closet got right about Circus Baby. Hey, would you look at that? A compliment towards Fourth Closet Baby. Don't get used to it. Her wanting to escape Circus Baby's pizza world isn't just a plot point for the game's story, it's a metaphor. Just like how she was trying to break through to the surface, we all have worse versions of ourselves, that dark reflection who's trying to break free so it can wreak havoc on the world. Sometimes that darker version of ourselves is incredibly enticing and lulls you into doing what it wants so it can break through. Your dark self knows you better than anyone else, including the best ways to manipulate your weaknesses. That's what makes Baby so terrifying, since her best trait is knowing how to play pretend. She can pretend to be you, to the point your loved ones wouldn't even know it wasn't you. I love Baby's concept, but the reason I personally don't like her is that I wouldn't want to go up against her. But that's exactly why she would have been the next perfect villain after William Afton. Baby shouldn't have appeared in Pizzeria Simulator. She was wasted in that game, and even the fourth closet made better use of her. The player should have been piecing Circus Baby together using Tape Girl's tapes and Help Wanted, and the one to create her own personal minion, Vanny. In Security Breach, it should have been revealed before the true ending boss that Vanny had perfectly rebuilt her master, Circus Baby, as she stepped out of the recharge station. When Cassie got a call from Gregory to save him from the ruined Pizzaplex, it should have been Scrap Baby who stepped out of the darkness to greet Cassie, still mimicking his voice to show her how well she can play pretend. While I may not be the biggest fan of Baby, I absolutely love her concept and believe she was wasted as a villain way too soon. The worst monsters are not those waiting for us out there in the world, but the ones we have to confront every time we cast upon our own reflection. We avoid those whose personality carries a mirror with them because none of us wants to gaze upon a monster built in our own image. So be careful the next time you attend a circus, party, fair, or carnival that happens to feature some clowns, for the tallest one might be carrying that mirror, and you might not like what she has to show you. Thank you for making it this far, because that makes you my shining star. If it had a lot more tweaking and Baby was Charlie's she then absorbed that same child who only wanted to be like her so her father would give her attention. As tragic as his backstory is, it doesn't excuse all of Baby's flaws in the fourth closet. Giving her. Baby is still a psychotic robot who tried to kill Charlie, all of her friends, and those